To learn Hilchos Beis Abchira in the days Bimei Ben HaMitzorim. We have the honor today of a Choshev in German from the Choshuvei HaMechanchim in New York, Harav HaChosid, Harav Mנחם מענדל Zaayanc is going to give us halacha in Hilchos Beis Abchira. Harav מענדel, bevakasha.
So one of the came of the Beit HaMikdash and the Mishkan was the Menorah. Now the Menorah was made out of, there was the main branch, the middle branch, the Konam Tzoi, the Gufa, that was called off from the Gufa Menorah, and they had the 6 branches branching out three on each side, 2 in sets of 2. One set of 2 coming out, a second and a third set of of branches that were coming out. Now, on the Menorah were decorated cups and knobs and flowers that were for decoration. And the Torah says like this. The Torah, I'm just going to find the psukim here. And the Torah says like this. With regards to the side branches in which it was coming out from the side, the Shisha Konim says the Torah that in each of these 6 branches, Shloisha Gviyin, there's to be three cups. Mishukodim. Mishukodim means that they were engraved or chiseled out, something like almonds, with a decorative way of chiseling out to make them look nice. There's a way of the certain manner that Rambam said, a certain design of how workmanship, how they would chisel out and make the decorations, and it made it nicer. So you should have 3 cups, mishukodim, on each stick, kafta v'ferech, and a knob and a flower. Then the Torah goes on to say about the main branches of the Menorah, the Gufa Menorah. The pasuk says that in the Menorah are ba'agviyim, there are 4 cups, mishukodim, that are chiseled out in this manner, kaftera upracha, with its knobs and its flowers. So now the Gemara tells us the Gemara says in Yuma, the Gemara is discussing about this pasuk of mishukodim, that they're chiseled out. The Gemara said that we are not sure how to read it. The Gemara says in the Brayz of 5 psukim, but we're going to focus on our pasuk. It's not clear how you read the pshat in the pasuk. The pasuk says there are 4 cups on the Menorah, mishukodim, that are chiseled out. It's flowers and it's knobs. So the Gemara says we don't know. The Brayz says we don't know. Is the mishukodim the word? How do you read it? Do you read it with the words before? Do you read it with the words after? Do you read it Menorah ba'agviyim mishukodim? There are 4 chiseled out cups, and then it's knobs and it's flowers. Or do you read it Menorah ba'agviyim? There are 4 cups. Mishukodim it's cups and its flowers and its knobs are chiseled out. Therefore, it's not known if they're going for the parts before, they're going before after, or they're going to the parts after. The Brayz that brings another 4 psukim, similar places where you have this kind of stuff and how you read it. Now, to point out, this suffix is only here on this pasuk and Ramadan, which discusses about the main branch of the Menorah. But on the pasuk before, when it discusses about the side branches, there it is very clear, and I'll explain in a minute why, that there's no suffix, that the dinam mishukodim that have to be chiseled out only applies to the cups and not to the flowers and the knobs. Not the flowers and the knobs. Why? So Tosfos explains, to read the pasuk, you have to look at the trop, the way the pasuk is read. In the first pasuk, in the pasuk here of Ramadan, let's just start with the other one. We'll start with the pasuk Ramadan Gimel, which talks about the side ones. It's very easy. The pasuk is shloisha gvim mishukodim, the 3 chiseled out cups, bakana ha'echad on one stick, on one arm of the Menorah, kafta v'ferech, a flower and a knob. So the pasuk makes a space, makes a pause between the din mishukodim before then going to discuss the knob and the flowers. It's obvious that the mishukodim is going on the part that says before about the cup. It's only the next pasuk Ramadan, where it is not clear, where it's smack in the middle, right before you mention the cup and after the knob, and there's no space on either thing to tell us which way to read it. Tosfos adds more than that. The pasuk itself we have a suffix more. There's more reason for a doubt. Tosfos says, you read the pasuk, you look at the trop, the words are like this: V'amnei abog gvim, and there's a snachta, there's a pause, and then the trop goes mishukodim. Mishukodim is its own trop, zakef katan. And make after Rabbecha is a tipchasek pasuk. So Tosfos says after the gviyim there is a pause, there's a snachta. So that's by itself. And seemingly the reading of the pasuk, according to the dikduk, the way the trop tells us to read it, is that mishukodim is going together with the kafter Rabbecha and not with the cup. So seemingly from the reading of the pasuk itself, there's no seemingly is clear that is connected to the kafter Rabbecha. The problem is, says Tosfos, you have the other pasuk that is talking about the side sticks. Those are clear that it is going on the cups. So there was a place we don't know, we're pulled into ways. Do we look at the reading, the dikduk of this pasuk itself, or do we compare to the other sticks of the menorah? Why should we say the menorah is different? It's going to be chiseled out differently in the main stick and the side sticks, a side branch, and let's say they're all together, and therefore we're pulled either way, and we don't know what to do. Okay, so just to sum up before we go right there, before we go to the Rambam, the Psukim are very clear. The main branch of menorah is only chiseled out, is only requirement to be mishukadim on the cups. When it comes to the other branches, it is a suffix, it is in doubt whether you're required on the Braita tells us on the cups and knobs, or also alternatively on the cups or on the knobs of the flowers. Okay. So that's pretty good. So far so good. The problem is we look at the Rambam, and the Rambam writes, the Rambam in the beginning of Perek Gimel discusses the din of the menorah, and he goes through all the cheshbonos of how many flowers, how many knobs, how many cups, and all the things of both the main branch of the menorah and the side branch. He discussed it all. And the Rambam finishes off, v'hakel mishukodin. All of these things, all of these cups, should all be done in a manner of mishukodin, like shkedim, like chiseled out in this nice way of as an almond, whatever it means. Obvious question comes right away: where did Rambam get this to say and why that all of them need to be chiseled out? When it comes to the main branch of the menorah, when it comes to the main branch, the Gemara says there's a suffix, so we say, okay, we don't know, we'll do both. But the other branches, it's very, very clear that in that it's different. There is no suffix. It's very clear that only the cups required mishukadim, and the other parts are not required. Why did the Rambam tell us hakel mishukadim, that everything, all of the cups with the flowers and the knobs are all going to be chiseled out? There's a question a lot of them first are busy with, and they're trying to figure it out. Different answers are said in the matter. Those want to learn it pshat differently, that the suffix is really in both psukim, or we learn from one part to the other. But we're not going to get into that, we don't have time. The Rebbe has obviously there's questions on these things, and therefore the Rebbe comes with his own approach. So before we do that, the Rebbe, before we get to answer, the Rebbe has a different question. Let me push the kasha here in the what's happening are two questions, one leading to the other, which will then give us the answer of how the Rambam learned the din of mishukadim. The Rebbe asks a very possible question. What is pshat? What does it mean that the Torah writes something she'ein lo hechreya? The Torah writes something that we don't know how to read it. Now, our psukim, the way the Braita mentions 5 psukim that are not clear. Do you read it beginning or afterwards? Unclear. The reading the proper way to read it. But those questions are all things, aren't practical nafkaminas l'dinah. They're not ways how you have to do things. It's just about how the proper reading and pirush of the pasuk. So, okay, you could on the reading of the pasuk, but the Rebbe says here we're talking about pasuk. The Torah is telling Moshe, telling the Yidden, how do you make the menorah? This is a lemaisa. I question nafkaminas. I want you to make some of the mishukadim, chill it out. Tell me what to do. In that, there's no place for unclearness. Now, sometimes we know Torah is unclear in one place. There's someone else that gives a beer. We have another pasuk, Shnei Ksuvim, not about another pasuk explains it. Something Torah Shabbat explains it. But we need, but there has to be some explanation. Here, there is no explanation. Neither Torah Shabbat, neither Torah Shabbat. We're left. Suffix, the Braita tells us, Zok the Gemara, we don't know how to do it. What's going on? Why would the Torah do such a thing? Number one. Says the Rebbe, obviously then, you have to say that it wasn't written as suffix. Moshe Rabbeinu got this pasuk. Moshe Rabbeinu knew how to read. What was the proper interpretation of the pasuk? How to read it? What it's supposed to be? There was no question. There was no question. We know how to read it. The problem is later, over time, for whatever reason, it was forgotten. Like many things, we knew the halachos. It says many after Moshe's passing halachos were forgotten over the generation. The Gemara's form of things that were known that then were forgotten. So at some point or the other, what was clear in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu knew how to make them. What was the proper intent of the pasuk? Moshe knew the interpretation, and at some point they got lost, and therefore, when it comes by the time of the Gemara is saying we ourselves, looking back at the pasuk, do not know how to figure it out. So I need a different problem. Give a look at the menorah. The menorah from Moshe was sitting there, and at least the whole Bayis Rishon was sitting. That same menorah that Moshe Rabbeinu created was sitting in the Beis Hamikdash. So what? How do you have the question? What's the suffix? And the Meneda, there's other things in the Beis Hamikdash that there's things in the on the Kodesh and the Pareiches of the Odin which are not clear. So those are things that are not seen by everybody. The Meneda was out of visible, all the Kahanim went, whatever. Kahanim were going around, they saw it. It was something that people could have seen. Kahanim lit the Meneda. People, you go and see what's happening. And this Meshach Rabbeinu Meneda, Meshach Rabbeinu interpretation, see what he did. The Rebbe says you want to say it's by Sheni. The Rebbe says it doesn't make sense. The pastors from the second, the Meneda from the Bayis Rishon, where they did not have the Bayis Sheni, right? They built a different Meneda, definitely after Tanach Hashmonaim, said they built one out of space. And not the regular gold. They didn't have the same one, but the people came back after Golan's Bavel. They surely, it was only 70 years. There were people, it says there were people who came after the Golas, who remembered the first Beis Hamikdash. Sure, there were people who could have told us, seen what it was like, and they could have done it. And then they would have had that Meneda through Bayis Sheni. There was what to look and what to see. So, what's happening here? The Rebbe addresses this. This is another whole question. The Rebbe speaks about other places. B'chran, how do you have a shayna and mitzvahs? Things that we're always doing. For example, the famous question: how do you have a shayna? Machlokes Rashi ben Tam about tefillin. Just this is we're doing for generations. Everybody's doing tefillin non-stop. Let's maybe go look at the tefillin what we're doing. Until then, spoke about other places. The Rebbe said, but whatever you're going to say in all these things, the general clue the Rebbe brings out is that the machlokes must have been going before on. The machlokes must have been going before, and then the perushim that were said by Rashi and the different Rishonim were just reflections of previous differences they had. The question, where did the differences come from? The Rebbe says, whatever you're going to say about those other things may or may not work, whatever it's discussions, but here the Meneda, you have the Meneda, Moshe made Bahar Sinai. There's no place for doubt, there's no place for question. Each is going to say, what was the Kavanah by Matan Torah, where each one's going to learn his way, what was Gezok and Amar Chomesh Sinai, what was said back then. You have it in front of our eyes, this Meneda that was made by Moshe Rabbeinu. So what's the question? And the Rebbe says, due to this question, these two questions which are really one Shanachas V'Shtayim, the Rambam, this is what the Rambam learned. The Rambam felt obviously when the Gemara tells us, the Braita tells us that there's Ein Hechreya, that it's not clear. And obviously, as we said, it doesn't mean that it wasn't clear. It was clear back then, and it was made. Moshe Rabbeinu made a P was told and seen a way he clearly understood what it means. But nevertheless, looking at the Meneda would not have helped us. Looking at the Meneda would not give us a resolution to the doubt, because the Rambam, obviously, you had to make it. Obviously, it must be the P did. They had to make them all mishukadim, all them chiseled out. But that still does not tell us pshat in the pasuk. What's pshat? What's mean? What does this mean? The Rebbe said like this: that the din of mishukadim is different than the other din we're describing about the Meneda. The other din we're describing about the Meneda, the need for the cups and the flowers and the knobs and all the stuff. These are dinim in the Meneda. The Meneda has to have this amount of knobs on this branch, the main branch differently, and this amount of flowers, and this amount of knobs, and all the things that it has. So that, if the din of being should come to the same thing, there would be no place to come and tell us that you have to, we don't know, you start adding extra. Says the Rebbe, obviously the Rambam felt, Rambam learned that the dinim shekadim is a din in the manner on which it has to be made. The Torah said, when you do it, as we said before, shekadim is a form of workmanship. It's not a din, it required, it has to have, it's not something that additive, you're adding more pieces to the Meneda. It's the manner, it's the workmanship through which the Meneda is made. And when the Torah tells us that I want you to make it shekadim, it should be chiseled out, the chiseling out is a way of making it that makes it more nice. It's a way of making whatever you're already doing, it's telling us, do it in a way that'll be nice. It says the Rambam, when the Torah tells us one of the details that's Meshukadim, it is from there learned out. It's a Gimui Milsa. It's just telling us what is the way to manufacture, to work on the Meneda. So therefore, Torah only needs to tell us just one time. And from there you learn into the rest. When if the Torah attack was only talking about the cups and not the flowers, okay. Torah only needs to tell us what. If we're going to do it with the flowers, we're not adding something new from it. We're not adding a new shtickle to the Meneda. We're just learning the way Torah wants us to make the Meneda. Like many dinim we do all the time. Torah tells us in one place, and we can learn from this to another place. We can learn here that just like Torah tells us by the cups it needs to be chiseled out, so to this also has to be chiseled out. So therefore, the Rambam said they all have to be chiseled out. They all need to be mishukadim. And the information of the Meneda, they were all mishukadim. That still doesn't tell me, but which one the Torah actually told us to. Torah told me one of them, and we learned it to the other one. We don't know which one is the original, which one is the source, and which one was learned out from it. So look, a Moshe Rabbeinu Zaneda will not help us answer a suffix, but it won't help us answer a suffix. But nevertheless, there's a chiyuv on all of them to have it. What it comes out is that in each of the two psukim, both in the pasuk and the main branch of the Neder, both in the pasuk and the side branch of the Neder, the Torah tells us one of the items should be Mishukadim, and from there you learn out to the rest. By the side branches of the Neder, it tells us this with regards to the cups, and from there we learn to the flowers and the knobs. And by the main branch of the Neder, it's not clear if Torah tells us by the cups or the flowers, but whichever one it is said, we learn it to the other one, and therefore they all have to be, and they're all mechuyev to be mishukal. It never adds in, the never then said, you can see a bit of a different knech, a different vertage, in which not that they're all required equally to be mishukal, they're all required in the same way of work. Rather, the never says you can say it that really it's two different chiyuvim. One is the chiyuv to have mishukal, the chiyuv to make what the minayda has to be, and then there's another thing. It's more beautiful that way. It's a more, as the Rambam says, it's a nicer way of working. So even though the one that chiyuv to make one to make them both mishukal, but they made them both, said the Rambam, because that came in Vega. Everything has to be beautiful. So they made the other one. So right there, we wouldn't be able to check on Moshe Rabbeinu Zaneda. It wouldn't help us out because they're all mishukal. And therefore we would still have an unclearness what was the original kavanah of the pasuk. Yeah.